Let's get you ready for week 9 of the fantasy season by telling you who to start and who to sit at running back. We're going to do, as we do, go through each and every game for this week and tell you who we like at the position. Now, these players you've got to like no matter what their matchup is. These are the must starts at running back. Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, and DeAndre Swift. Don't forget, buys are back in effect. We got 4 teams will be out of action. That includes the 49ers, Lions, Jaguars, and the Broncos. Before we get to the first matchup, don't forget, if you haven't tried Underdog Fantasy yet, this is the perfect time to do it because you not only get the 100% deposit match that is up to $500 for a limited time, you can also take advantage of this week's new customer special, and it's Lamar Jackson going over half a yard on Sunday. Just take that pick, combine it with any other pick we like, and we're about to give you some that we like at running back for this coming week. And that gives you a really good chance to win in addition to the money you've already doubled for depositing using code ENDGAME. Or you can just click the link down below. Now on to the running backs. Thursday night is going to start with the Titans at the Steelers. King Henry is looking like his old self. What about Tyjae Spears then? Do you think that he's got anything going for him in this offense with a new quarterback?
Yeah, can't feel good about Spears this week. This doesn't feel like a game where they should be trailing a lot. We should see a lot of Tyjae Spears. We're probably going to see another big Derrick Henry week. So even with 4 teams on bye, I've got to sit Tyjae Spears if I can.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for Spears, what we didn't see from Levis was dump offs and check downs. He was chucking it down the field, and so that's actually not good for Spears. And of course, the fact that Derrick Henry hasn't been traded and is probably not going to be traded, and also the fact that he's looking still really good these days, Spears can't be started. Now, on the other hand, we got Najee Harris in Pittsburgh. It was back to kind of what we were used to. Not a good game from Najee. Does he bounce back at home?
I doubt it. Tough matchup. I mean, you're really banking on him falling into the end zone, and how often has he done that this year? So, again, I know there's 4 teams on bye, but I'd have to be extremely desperate. I am not starting Najee Harris.
Sadly, with Najee this year, it's like only in a plus matchup. And this is not. Titans still a really tough run defense. Not the best anymore, but it's tough. You can't start Najee. Jaylen Warren, I mean, maybe as a pass catcher, does he give you at least a floor?
Only in a PPR league. He gives you a decent floor, if you need him, only in PPR leagues.
Yeah, only a desperation flex if you need somebody because of buys. But other than that, just not enough upside here. Now we have another international game this coming week. This time it's in Germany, and it might wind up being the highest scoring game of the week. It's the Dolphins at the Chiefs. Let's talk ground game. So Raheem Mostert, not the RB1 anymore. Does he get right in this matchup, or are you starting to worry?
Definitely starting to worry, but look, he still has touchdown upside pretty much every single game. So, yeah, you can't feel as good about him. I mean, certainly not like you did early in the season, but he can still score. So I think especially with 4 teams on bye in what should be a high-scoring game, I think Raheem Mostert is still a good start.
He's still a good start just because he's starting running back in this offense. Still the lead guy until HN comes back. So we haven't seen anybody else like Jeff Wilson or really Ahmed cut into his touches. Not an RB1 anymore, but he's still a good start. Now what about Isaiah Pacheco? I mean, Denver was supposed to be a smash spot for him. Twice he's played the Broncos, and twice he kind of let down.
Yeah, I kind of feel very similar with him and Raheem Mostert. Like, they both could score. They're probably not going to have huge games necessarily outside of that. But again, it's not the worst matchup here. He could fall into the end zone. It could be a shootout. So with all these teams on bye, I think he's at least startable.
He's always startable because of his place in this offense, but he's also always limited because of his place in this offense that passes first. Without an explosive run, unless, those games where he has a big run, he doesn't get big yardage and touchdowns. I mean, you can't count on that. So, yeah, he's startable. He's always startable as an RB2. But just don't expect anything big. I'll tell you what, right now, it's not a big number, but his early line on underdog for pick'ems is at 57.5 rushing yard. I mean, again, he's not really surpassing that number unless he gets one of those big runs. Dolphins, not a shutdown defense, but what do we expect from this game? We expect it to be a battle of the quarterbacks. We expect it to be high scoring. I don't know that I feel Pacheco is going to have a big game. So right now, I'm hitting the lower on that. So you pair that pick with a pick like the Lamar Jackson freebie if you're new to underdog. And right there, you got a solid pair of pick'ems. Vikings at the Falcons. Well, this will be a different Minnesota offense because we're going to have a different quarterback. So, what does that mean for the ground game? Are we going to see more Alexander Madison, and does that mean he'll do any better?
I mean, we may see more of the ground game. This may be a team that now runs the ball more than we're used to, but how good can we really feel about Alexander Madison? This isn't a fantastic matchup either. The Falcons' defense actually been pretty good. I know the loss of Grady Jarrett hurts, but still not a smash spot. But, I mean, there are 4 teams on bye. He is technically, I guess, still the lead back, maybe. So I guess if you need him, you can start him.
That's the thing. I've never really been excited about Madison since the first couple of weeks in the season. Cam Akers has been involved. This offense in general is going to be just far less explosive, and that's what I worry about. Game script working against them. I don't know that they're going to get in great position to score. I'm going to fade Madison if I can. Cam Akers, I mean, I can't feel too much better about him. Sure, he can score the odd touchdown, but he, to me, is kind of a desperation play.
Yeah, you got to be pretty desperate to start Cam Akers, I think. Even in this week, I'm not doing it.
Now, Seahawks are going to take on the Ravens. Kenneth Walker, well, not going to put him as a no-doubt start because we saw his workload a little bit reduced. Are you worried, or is he still a guy that you just want in there for the most part?
I think I still want him in there for the most part. You've got to be a little worried, but we did see this earlier in the year, and then the next week it was like all Kenneth Walker again. But this isn't a fantastic matchup, on the road against Baltimore. So I think for the most part, you're still starting him, but may need to temper expectations a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Road matchup in Baltimore. Seattle has been just a little inconsistent on offense. I think I'm starting Walker, pretty much everywhere. You'd have to have really good running backs to put over him, and not reading too much into last week either. But that said, what about Zach Charbonnet? Got his most usage. Wasn't too far off in terms of touches compared to Walker. Is this something, or is it just way too much risk?
Yeah, still a lot of risk this week. I mean, if you're desperate, there's worse guys you could start than him, but you'd have to be desperate.
Yeah, agree. Let's not go overboard. We love our rookie running backs, but I love to see them more involved. He's definitely behind Walker still, so I'm not starting Charbonnet. I'll stash him, though. And then there's Gus the Bus. What do we say? Doesn't put up big yardage, needs a touchdown. He got one, and then another, and then another. But that was against Arizona, and now is going against Seattle. Could he still be a solid RB2, though?
Yeah, again, I'm going to say the same thing about that I did with the Kenneth Walker. I think for the most part, you're probably starting him as an RB2 after what he's done the last 2 weeks, but this is a very tough matchup. Seattle's been great against the run. They just strengthened the D-line with that trade with the Giants. But he can always score. He's basically getting the touches here. So temper expectations, but still a startable RB2.
Always startable. Like I said, got that scoring potential. Just doesn't have that floor. But look, if he's still the guy here, Baltimore's looking good. They're at home. Solid RB2. Cardinals at the Rams in week 9. I guess it's Amari Demercado now, finally, who's owning this backfield. Unless they switch it up on us again, who knows. If it's Demercado, can you trust him after a pretty solid performance last week?
Yeah, trust is a tough word, though. I mean, without a touchdown, what are you really getting here? Not a ton of upside in this offense. Now it sounds like we're going to see Clayton Tune, the rookie. If you need him, you can start him because he's getting the touches, but that's as high as I can go.
Yeah, I wish I could advocate for him a little bit more. But even as a waiver wire pickup, it's like you got, another week before, they're off, and then you get James Conner probably back, and then this offense will look different with Kyler Murray. I don't know. I'm only flexing him if I absolutely need to. For the Rams, well, Darrell Henderson somehow was the leading receiver for the team. And I don't mean among running backs. I mean he was actually the leading receiver on the team last week. That seems like an outlier. What do you expect from him this week?
Yeah, I don't expect him to be the leading receiver, but I expect him to still catch some passes. It's a great matchup against the Cardinals. May not have Matthew Stafford this week, so they also may lean on the running game a bit more. He did, lose goal line work to Royce Freeman. That's not good, but this is such a good matchup. I'm going to put Darrell Henderson in the if you need him, you can start him this week.
I think you got to like Darrell Henderson because going against this Cardinals defense that just gave up 3 touchdowns to Gus Edwards and chunk yardage too. And he's the one who's getting the receptions out of that backfield. So I think I put him kind of right there with Gus, believe it or not. Maybe a little bit lower. I'd say low-end RB2 in this week where some big names are on bye. And then Royce Freeman, could he be playable too? Because like you mentioned, he did get a touchdown last week.
Yeah, because of the matchup and because of the fact that we did see him get goal line work, I think he's at least somebody you could consider starting if you need him because he could at least score, and it is a great matchup.
Without a touchdown, he'll probably disappoint. In a standard league, sure, half PPR, playable, streamable. PPR, not the best option, but if you need him, why not? All right, Browns going to Green Bay, taking on the Packers. Jerome Ford surprisingly played last week, was limited, which is not a surprise. Do we see a better Jerome Ford, and do we see Jerome Ford as the lead, or is this now a committee with Kareem Hunt?
It depends. It depends on how he practices. If he's getting full practices in all week, then yeah, I think we see him as the lead. And this is a very good matchup against the Packers' run defense. So for me, if Jerome Ford is good, if he's not on the injury report, I think he's a solid start this week.
I think he should be. I think we're going to see a solid Jerome Ford rest of the season, assuming full health. He could be a surprise smash this week. Again, if he's good to go and he gets his regular duty. I know we'll still see Hunt, maybe a little Strong mixed in there, but I think Ford is still a solid RB this week. And then what about Kareem Hunt? He's finding the end zone, getting touches. Where do you put him?
I put him right there with the guys that if you need to start him, you can. He could always score. It is a good matchup. He's not been super efficient with his touches, so you're probably not going to get a lot if he doesn't score, but this week with buys in a good matchup, if you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, startable because of that upside, the way he's being used. Catch a couple of passes. This Cleveland offense is kind of just chugging along without Deshaun Watson. Not a bad spot. You know what? He is streamable. And then there's Aaron Jones and the Packers running game. 2 good spots in a row has let us down. Are we done with Aaron Jones or expecting better?
Yeah, I cannot start Aaron Jones this week against the Browns. And I don't even know if he's healthy or what, but this offense is just so bad. And now going against the Browns, too much risk here. You've got to be really desperate. I can't do it.
No, he just doesn't look like the same guy. We heard Coach LaFleur say last week he's not 100% or really close to it yet. He doesn't look like it. I'm going to sit him until I see something drastically different. And then what about A.J. Dillon?
Yeah, same. I can't do it. Touchdown or bust. It's not a great matchup. Not starting A.J. Dillon.
Nah. This whole offense isn't good. A.J. Dillon had 2 decent games against bad run defenses. This is a good defense. Sit Dillon. Buccaneers going to take on the Texans. Well, good news if you had Rachaad White. He came through with a solid performance last week. Can he follow it up against the Houston defense?
I don't see why not. This is 2 games in a row, and now he gets finally a plus matchup. Houston is not the, bottom of the league run defense like we've used to the last, 2 to 3 years, but they're also not a shutdown run defense. But really, for him, it's more about the pass catching, right? And that's what we've been seeing the last 2 weeks. I don't see why that would stop. He gets the bulk of the carries. It's not a terrible matchup. I think this week he's a solid start.
That's exactly it. He's finally getting used as a receiver out the backfield. That's where his value lies, and that's what I wanted to see. This matchup is not scaring me off. I think he's a solid start this week. Then there's the Texan running backs. It's evolved into kind of an ugly timeshare. Ugly meaning neither guy has been that good. So let's start with Dameon Pierce at home, but against the Bucs.
Yeah, against the Buccaneers. splitting with Devin Singletary, terrible run game. No way I could start Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, you can blame the O-line and those injuries, but to some extent, you can't just blame the O-line. Dameon Pierce shaping up to be a bust. Can't start him this week. Devin Singletary, starting to get more touches, but he wasn't any better last week, averaged 3 yards per carry.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's hard enough for one running back in this system getting all the touches to be fantasy relevant. When you're splitting, almost no chance. Can't start Devin Singletary either.
Yeah, this backfield is like if you cut Josh Jacobs in half and had to pick one side, which would it be? I'll go neither. Commanders at the Patriots. Let's start with Brian Robinson. It's been firmly kind of mediocre lately. Does he get better against this banged up Pats D?
I mean, probably not. He's right there with the guys for me that's, if you need him, you can start him. He could score. He gets enough work, I guess, but I don't love him this week, so only if you need him can you start him.
I mean, I get it was a tough matchup against the Eagles last week, and it turned into a shootout, but he's just not getting the kind of volume I'd like, and it's not even because other running backs are getting involved. They're just passing it a ton. So, touchdown upside, solid in standard, just okay in PPR. And I guess that's a good way to describe Ramondre Stevenson. I don't know, do you have any stronger feelings about him?
Not really. I mean, I thought he would come through last week. He didn't. I don't know, maybe with the Kendrick Bourne injury, he catches more passes now. I don't know, I'm clutching at straws here for Ramondre. But look, there's 4 teams on bye. He gets the bulk of the carries. I think if you need him, you can start him.
Like you said, maybe he gets more involved. At least he gives you some sort of floor in PPR, so startable, but you can't get too excited. Bears and the Saints. Let's see how excited we can get about the Chicago backfield. It looks like we'll have the rookie Tyson Bagent one more start at least. Deontay Foreman was the lead back and didn't really do much this time around. What do you expect against New Orleans?
Not a whole lot. Tough matchup. Probably going to be, in bad game script again. I don't think I can play Deontay Foreman. I mean, look, I guess I can't say complete sit this week, but only if you absolutely need him.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a touchdown or bust kind of play. So in PPR, I'd rather not. I would look elsewhere. Foreman, I think, is going to need a better matchup to be productive. And then Rashawn Johnson eased back into things after missing a couple of weeks with a concussion. Does he get more involved? And if so, is it enough?
I mean, he might get more involved, but is it enough? Probably not. I mean, can't feel good about this backfield. We saw Darrington Evans score a touchdown. Too deep here. Even with 4 teams on bye, I can't do it.
Yeah, that was pretty annoying, wasn't it? I mean, his path is as a pass catcher as well. Not really seeing that much upside here in this offense. I think you're just going to have to sit Johnson. All right, Colts against the Panthers. Let's talk JT. Jonathan Taylor was looking really good, but then Zach Moss is just still there lurking, stealing touches. Is this going to continue all season, and how strongly can you feel about Jonathan Taylor right now?
Yeah, that was really annoying because Taylor was looking great in the first half, and then he kind of became invisible in the second half. I don't know what that was all about, but he looked fantastic. I mean, he looked all the way back, and now he gets the Panthers, one of the worst run defenses. I think you have to start Jonathan Taylor this week.
I think so too. I mean, he is still getting enough touches to be fantasy valuable, but in this matchup, you really don't need to think twice. He definitely has touchdown upside. In fact, both these guys have a lot of upside. I'll just say right now, I kind of like Zach Moss better than a lot of the running backs we've already talked about.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to be splitting here in this matchup, you got to like him. So I think he's also a solid start.
Now let's get to the Panthers backfield, which might turn out to be one of the ugliest we've seen. Miles Sanders did come back, wasn't on the injury report, and barely touched the ball. I believe it was 2 carries for 0 yards. What's going on here?
I think he's just not performing, and Chuba Hubbard's been better. I mean, there's no way you can put Miles Sanders in your lineup. You are risking a 0. There is no chance I'm starting him.
Yeah, I don't think we can even call him a buy low. I think it's just time to just cut ties with him. I don't know, but there's no way you can consider him at all this week. So what does that mean for Chuba Hubbard? Does he become someone who's more interesting, or is this just a team you want to avoid?
No, I like Chuba Hubbard a lot. The Colts have one of the fastest paces in the NFL, so I think they're going to actually make the Panthers run more snaps than they like here. And it's a great matchup for running backs. He's getting pretty much all the touches here. I like Chuba Hubbard a lot this week.
All right. I mean, if he's taking over this backfield, you got to at least consider him against the Colts. I find it risky to put anybody from that offense who's not named Adam Thielen right now, but I'll agree. I think he is at least a solid RB2 candidate. Then the Giants at the Raiders. Still going to talk about Josh Jacobs because he's still just not smashing like last year. But do you have to start him against the G-Men?
I mean, it's a great matchup. I know Breece Hall did not put up good rushing numbers against him, but he put up good receiving numbers against him, which Jacobs could do. Giants not strong against the run. They just traded away one of their best defensive linemen. Jacobs still gets the touches. I think this week, especially in this matchup, you got to start him.
Yeah, for the most part, again, the volume is so valuable. Even if he's not being very efficient, the matchup is great at home. Got to start Jacobs. And then we got the Cowboys at the Eagles. Should be a fun game. It hasn't been that fun starting Tony Pollard lately. I mean, also been kind of a disappointment. Does he turn things around?
This is not the week where you would expect him to turn it around. The Eagles, very good against the run. They're pretty much a pass funnel, right? They're giving up a lot to quarterbacks and wide receivers, nothing to running backs. I mean, it would be hard to bench Tony Pollard, especially with 4 teams on bye, but I'm going to say he's just more of an RB2 this week.
Yeah, the one good thing with Pollard is we saw like a couple weeks ago, we know he's a good pass catcher. He could get involved that way, especially if the Eagles are going to give extra attention to CeeDee Lamb, which they might. So definitely still startable, but yeah, I agree. I don't feel like he's in line for a top 10 finish all of a sudden. Bills at the Bengals. Let's talk James Cook. It's been an up and down experience with him. Which way does he go this week?
Who knows? The thing is with James Cook, he's getting the usage, not catching as many passes as I'd like. But you just never know with James Cook, right? He can rip off a long run, he could score a touchdown, or he could not rip off a long run and not score a touchdown, and then you wish you didn't start him. It's not the worst matchup. It could be a high-scoring game. I think with 4 teams on bye, I'm going to put him in that if you need him, you can start him category.
You never know what to expect here, but like I will say, the Bengals have not been very good against the run. I think this is a game where even though we expect shootout, of course, we think about the quarterbacks. These teams are going to have to run the ball at some point. I think James Cook is fine as an RB2, maybe a little bit on the lower end, but I think he's definitely somebody you can consider this week. And what about Latavius Murray? Just when it looked like he was carving out a role in this offense, is he getting faded as well?
It seems like it, but he did get a couple goal line chances. Of course, he did nothing with them, so he could always score, but without that, you're getting almost nothing, so can't put Latavius Murray in my lineup this week.
No, it's touchdown or bust with him. I know you might be thin at running back with 4 teams on bye and some big-name running backs out, but I'd search somewhere else. Now you mentioned those goal line carries where Latavius did not cash in. Maybe that's why the Bills went out and got Lenny. That's right, Leonard Fournette is a Bill. So it may not be that he suits up this week, but what if he does? Are you thinking there's a possibility he comes through?
No way I could start Leonard Fournette this week. I mean, just signed to the team, probably going to barely play if he even plays. I mean, you want to put him on your bench, fine, but don't put him in your starting lineup.
Yeah, I know it's so tempting to take a name from the past and, put him in because he's on a good team. I get all that, but no, I don't even expect him to touch the ball this week. And if he does, what are you hoping for the best? A 1-yard touchdown, maybe? And then Joe Mixon, speaking of names from the past, he looked like his old self, had his best game of the season. Are we back in on Mixon?
No, but look, Mixon can do what Mixon did last week. He can score a touchdown. He'll catch some passes. He'll be involved. He's in a good offense. So, like I say pretty much every week, he's startable, but I don't love him.
He still just kind of lives in that mid-tier RB2 range. Always startable, never exciting, but he is what he is. And then Monday night, it's going to be the Chargers at the Jets. Let's talk Breece Hall. Had some good fantasy numbers, even though it wasn't a good rushing day. Is Breece creeping towards, I would say, almost must-start territory?
Yeah, when you just look at the fantasy numbers, yes, but he's really still struggling on the ground. And maybe part of that is the offensive line, but I think that's also a big part from that ACL recovery. But he's getting involved as a pass catcher. We know he can always rip off a long run like he did against the Giants. It's not the worst matchup. The Chargers are not like the worst run defense anymore. They're kind of middle of the road. But I think if you got Breece Hall for the most part, you're starting him.
Yeah, there's not that many running backs who have his kind of upside. The Chargers run defense, nothing to be scared of. So I think Breece is definitely a solid start. All right, now you know about running backs. What about wide receiver, quarterback, tight end? Don't worry. We got you covered with all the start sit information that you need. Check out our Week 9 playlist with that and more.